Welcome to today's story, a gripping tale of love, betrayal, and resilience. Lauren's seemingly perfect life takes a devastating turn when she uncovers her husband Ethan's shocking infidelity, leading her into a web of lies, manipulation, and a chilling campaign of control. Join us as we dive into her courageous journey to reclaim her freedom and rediscover her strength. This is a story that will leave you enraged, inspired, and rooting for justice. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Let's get started. It was the spring of 2015, and everything felt like it was falling into place. Life in Cedar Falls, a charming, quiet town nestled in the rolling hills of the Midwest, had a rhythm of its own. This wasn't the kind of place where people expected drama. Cedar Falls was postcard perfect: brick streets, a bustling coffee shop on every corner, and a tight-knit community where everyone knew everyone, or at least they thought they did. Our story begins with Lauren and Ethan, a couple who, by all appearances, had it all. Lauren was a 32-year-old marketing executive with an infectious laugh and a knack for making everyone feel at ease. She had that rare blend of sharp intelligence and effortless charm, the kind of person who could host a dinner party and make it look like a Pinterest spread come to life. Ethan, on the other hand, was her perfect complement, or so it seemed. At 35, he was a structural engineer, methodical and steady, with a calm demeanor that balanced Lauren's more vibrant personality. Together, they seemed like the ultimate power couple, but as we all know, life isn't always what it seems. The couple had just celebrated their 6th wedding anniversary in early March, marked by an Instagram-worthy weekend getaway to a rustic cabin in the mountains. Friends and family flooded the comments with words like goals and perfect couple. But beneath the surface, things weren't quite as picture-perfect as the filtered snapshots suggested. Lauren had been feeling increasingly disconnected from Ethan over the past year. It wasn't anything obvious at first, just little things, like the way he barely glanced up from his phone during dinner, or how their conversations had dwindled to logistics about grocery lists and weekend chores. She brushed it off as a phase, telling herself that every marriage had its ebbs and flows. But the sense of unease lingered. Things took a turn one particularly dreary Tuesday evening. Rain was drumming against the windows of their suburban home as Lauren set the table for dinner. Ethan was running late. Again, he'd texted earlier to say he was stuck in a meeting, but when 9:30 rolled around, she began to wonder if he'd forgotten about dinner altogether. When he finally walked through the door, he was distracted, his brow furrowed in that way it always was when he was stressed about work. "Long day?" Lauren asked, trying to keep her tone light. "You have no idea," he muttered, dropping his briefcase by the door and heading straight for the kitchen. He poured himself a drink, scotch, neat, and sank into his usual spot at the table, without so much as a glance at the meal she'd prepared. Lauren felt a pang of disappointment but didn't press him. Instead, she filled the silence with chatter about her day, hoping to draw him out. But Ethan only offered absent-minded nods and monosyllabic responses, his eyes drifting to the screen of his phone every few minutes. It was as though he was physically present, but mentally somewhere else entirely. Over the next few weeks, Ethan's behavior grew increasingly erratic. Late nights at the office became more frequent, and he was constantly glued to his phone. When Lauren asked him about it, he would wave her off with vague explanations about work deadlines or a demanding client, but the excuses didn't sit well with her. One evening, as Ethan stepped into the shower, Lauren found herself staring at his phone, which he'd left charging on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a notification, a message from someone named Becca. The preview read, "Can't wait to see you again." Lauren felt her heart skip a beat. She told herself it was probably innocent, maybe a coworker or an old friend, but something about the tone of the message felt off. The next day, Lauren couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. She tried to dismiss it as paranoia, but the doubt had planted a seed in her mind. She decided to dig a little deeper, starting with Ethan's social media. As she scrolled through his posts, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Pictures of their anniversary trip, a few updates about work, and even a throwback photo from their honeymoon in Italy. But then she noticed something odd. A series of likes and comments from the same account, a Becca Marie 87. Lauren clicked on the profile. Becca Marie's page was public, filled with carefully curated snapshots of sunsets, yoga poses, and brunches with friends. Nothing overtly suspicious, but it was the frequency of her interactions with Ethan's posts that caught Lauren's attention. It was as though this woman was always just there, lingering in the background of his online life. That evening, as they sat on the couch watching TV, Lauren couldn't help but steal glances at Ethan. He seemed completely oblivious to her growing suspicion, laughing at the sitcom playing on the screen. But Lauren's mind was racing. Was she overreacting? Or was there something more to this than just a few innocuous messages? She decided to bring it up casually at first. "So, who's Becca?" she asked, keeping her tone light as she scrolled on her phone. Ethan didn't miss a beat. "Oh, she's just a colleague. We've been working on this big project together." "Why?" "No reason," Lauren said quickly, forcing a smile. But the way Ethan had answered, too quickly, too casually, only made her more suspicious. Over the next few weeks, Lauren's unease turned into full-blown suspicion. She started noticing more little things, the way Ethan would always angle his phone away from her when texting, or how he suddenly had a lot of client dinners and team outings. She even caught him whispering into the phone late one night, his voice too low for her to make out the words. Lauren tried to confront him again, but Ethan brushed her off with irritation. "You're being ridiculous," he said, his tone sharper than she'd ever heard it. "I'm working my ass off to provide for us, and you're accusing me of—" "What, exactly?" The accusation stung, and Lauren felt a wave of guilt wash over her. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was overthinking things. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. The turning point came when Lauren confided in her best friend, Sarah. During one of their regular coffee dates, Sarah had been her sounding board for years, the one person who could cut through Lauren's overthinking with a healthy dose of pragmatism. "I don't know, Sarah," Lauren said, stirring her latte absently. "It's probably nothing, but I can't stop thinking about it." Sarah leaned forward, her expression serious. "Lauren, you're not crazy. If your gut is telling you something's off, you need to trust it." "But what if I'm wrong?" Lauren whispered, her voice trembling. "And what if you're not?" Sarah countered. "Listen, I'm not saying you should jump to conclusions, but maybe it's time to dig a little deeper, find out the truth, whatever it is." That night, Lauren lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Sarah's words echoed in her mind, and she realized she couldn't keep living in limbo. She needed answers. Lauren decided to take matters into her own hands. She wasn't sure what she would find, or if she even wanted to know. But one thing was clear. The life she and Ethan had built together was beginning to crack, and the only way to fix it was to uncover the truth. Lauren decided to follow Sarah's advice. If she wanted to save her marriage, or at least find peace, she needed to stop second-guessing herself and start searching for the truth. The next morning, while Ethan was in the shower, Lauren couldn't resist the temptation any longer. His phone sat charging on the nightstand, the screen dark but calling to her like a forbidden fruit. Her heart pounded as she picked it up, her hands trembling slightly. She tapped the screen, and to her surprise, or maybe not, his phone wasn't locked. As she scrolled through his messages, her stomach dropped. There they were, a string of messages from Becca. Some were mundane, others flirtatious, but it was the last one that hit like a punch to the gut. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait for the next time, XO." Lauren felt like the floor had been pulled out from under her. Her breathing quickened, and her vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. She couldn't believe what she was reading. Or maybe she could. All the signs had been there. She just hadn't wanted to see them. That evening, Lauren couldn't bring herself to look at Ethan. She went through the motions of making dinner, setting the table, and folding laundry, but her mind was racing. Should she confront him? Should she wait? Sarah had been her lifeline through this, and she knew she needed her friend's advice before making any rash decisions. The following day, Lauren met Sarah at their favorite park. As they strolled along the tree-lined paths, she spilled everything: the messages, the growing distance, and the gut-wrenching realization that her husband might not be the man she thought he was. "I can't believe this is happening," Lauren whispered, her voice trembling. "What do I do, Sarah? How do I even begin to process this?" Sarah's face was a mix of empathy and resolve. "Lauren, you deserve answers. He owes you that much. But you also need to be prepared for what comes next. If you confront him, there's no going back." That evening, as Ethan sat on the couch scrolling through his phone, Lauren decided she couldn't wait any longer. Her heart was pounding, but her voice was steady as she asked, "Who's Becca?" Ethan froze, his face a mask of confusion and guilt. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Ethan," Lauren said, her voice rising. "I saw the messages. I know everything." For a moment, Ethan didn't say anything. Then he sighed, setting his phone down on the coffee table. "It's not what you think," he began, but Lauren cut him off. "Don't insult me by pretending this is nothing. I saw the messages, Ethan. Just tell me the truth." Ethan's defenses crumbled under her unwavering gaze. "Okay, fine," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's someone else." Lauren felt her knees go weak. Hearing him say the words out loud made it all too real. She fought back tears as she asked, "How long?" "6 months," he replied, his voice thick with shame. "But it's over now. I ended it." Lauren shook her head, the weight of his betrayal pressing down on her like a heavy stone. "Why, Ethan? Why would you do this to us?" "I don't know," he said, his voice cracking. "I guess I felt disconnected, like we were just going through the motions." His words felt like a slap in the face. Disconnected. "You could have talked to me, Ethan. You could have worked on this with me instead of this." The conversation spiraled into an emotional confrontation, each accusation and apology cutting deeper than the last. Ethan begged for forgiveness, promising to do whatever it took to rebuild their marriage. But Lauren wasn't sure if she could ever trust him again. Over the next few days, the house felt like a war zone. Tense and heavy with unspoken words, Ethan tried to be attentive, offering to cook dinner, clean the house, and even cancel his late-night work meetings. But Lauren couldn't shake the image of him with Becca, couldn't silence the nagging doubts that whispered, "What if he does it again?" One evening, Sarah came over to check on Lauren. They sat in the kitchen with glasses of wine, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the otherwise quiet house. "Have you thought about what you're going to do?" Sarah asked gently. Lauren sighed, staring into her glass. "I don't know, Sarah. Part of me wants to believe he can change, that we can fix this, but another part of me feels like it's already too late." Sarah placed a hand on Lauren's. "Whatever you decide, just remember that you deserve happiness. You don't have to settle for less." As Lauren sat alone later that night, scrolling through old photos of happier times, she realized something important. She needed to find herself again. For years, she had defined herself by her role as Ethan's wife, but now she had to figure out who she was without him. And if you're watching this right now, let me ask you, what would you do in Lauren's shoes? Let me know in the comments below. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. The next morning, Lauren called Ethan into the living room. He looked nervous, his hands fidgeting as he sat across from her. "I need space," she said firmly. "I need time to figure out what I want and whether I can forgive you. So, I think you should move out for a while." Ethan's face fell, but he nodded. "If that's what you need, I'll do it. Just, please don't give up on us." Lauren didn't respond. Instead, she watched as Ethan packed a bag and left, the sound of the door closing behind him echoing in her ears. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet, but this time, the silence felt like a blank canvas, a chance to start over. With Ethan gone, Lauren found herself in uncharted territory. The house felt both quieter and heavier without him there, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. At first, she wasn't sure what to do with the space and time she had demanded. Every corner of the house seemed to whisper memories of their life together, both the good and the bad. But Lauren was determined not to let herself spiral. She threw herself into work, spending late nights at her laptop and volunteering for new projects. Still, the questions about Ethan's betrayal loomed large in her mind. She wanted to believe him when he said the affair was over. But trust, once shattered, is nearly impossible to piece back together. One afternoon, while organizing her home office, Lauren stumbled upon an old photo album. It was filled with pictures of her and Ethan during their early days together, smiling at friends' weddings, hiking through the mountains, and sharing stolen kisses on city streets. She lingered on a photo of them laughing at a holiday party, his arm draped protectively around her shoulders. She flipped the page and froze. There, tucked into the album, was a handwritten note. It was from Ethan, written just before their wedding. "Lauren, you are my everything. No matter what life throws at us, I promise to always fight for you, for us." The words stung, a cruel reminder of how far they'd drifted from those promises. She wondered if Ethan had ever truly meant them, or if they were just empty words. Just as Lauren was grappling with these emotions, her phone buzzed. It was an unfamiliar number. She hesitated before answering, her heart racing with the thought of who it might be. "Hello?" she said cautiously. "Hi, is this Lauren?" A soft, hesitant voice replied. "This is Becca." Lauren's breath caught. The last thing she'd expected was a call from her. "What do you want?" Lauren asked, her voice sharp. I just wanted to say I'm sorry," Becca said quickly. "I didn't know Ethan was married at first, and when I found out, I should have walked away. I needed you to know that." Lauren's mind raced, trying to process what she was hearing. "Why now? Why are you telling me this?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Because he called me last night," Becca admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "He said he missed me." Lauren felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. She had wanted answers, but this was worse than anything she'd imagined. Ethan had promised her it was over. Yet here he was, reaching out to the woman who had already torn their lives apart. "Thank you for telling me," Lauren managed, her voice trembling. She ended the call and sat in stunned silence, the phone still clutched in her hand. That evening, Lauren called Ethan. Her voice was calm, almost eerily so, as she told him they needed to talk. He arrived an hour later, looking wary and defensive. "What's this about?" he asked, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for a trap. "I talked to Becca," Lauren said bluntly. "She told me you called her." Ethan's face went pale. "Lauren, I can explain." "Don't," she interrupted, her voice firm. "Don't insult me with more lies." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "It was a mistake. I was feeling lonely, but it didn't mean anything." Lauren stared at him, her anger bubbling to the surface. "Lonely? You think that justifies calling her after everything we've been through?" "I was weak, okay?" Ethan snapped, his voice rising. "I'm not perfect, Lauren, but I'm trying." Lauren shook her head, the weight of his words settling over her. "Trying isn't enough anymore, Ethan. I deserve better than this." After Ethan left, Lauren sat alone in the darkened living room. For the first time since discovering his betrayal, she felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about respect, trust, and the life she wanted to build for herself. The next morning, she called Sarah and told her everything. "I can't keep doing this," Lauren said, her voice breaking. I've tried to hold on, but it's killing me. Then let go, Sarah said simply. It's time. Lauren decided to file for divorce. The process was painful, filled with tense negotiations and moments of doubt, but with each step, she felt a little lighter. She moved into a smaller apartment downtown, a cozy space that she filled with plants, books, and the kind of peace she hadn't felt in years. One evening, as she unpacked boxes in her new home, she found herself smiling for the first time in what felt like forever. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She was finally free. And if you've made it this far, what would you do if you were in Lauren's shoes? Would you give someone like Ethan a second chance? Or would you walk away? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more stories like this one. Lauren's decision to move on was a turning point, but it didn't mean the journey forward was easy. The divorce proceedings were messy, and Ethan's attempts to reconcile didn't make it any easier. Each text and call from him felt like a step backward, dragging her into the chaos she was trying to leave behind. One evening, Ethan showed up at her apartment unannounced. Lauren hesitated before opening the door, her heart pounding. He looked disheveled, his shirt wrinkled and his eyes hollow. "Lauren," he began, his voice trembling. "Please, can we talk?" Lauren crossed her arms, blocking the doorway. "We've already said everything that needed to be said, Ethan. There's nothing left." "Just give me one more chance," he pleaded. "I'll go to counseling, therapy. Whatever it takes, I'll prove to you that I can change." For a brief moment, Lauren's resolve wavered, but then she remembered the months of lies, the sleepless nights, and the emptiness that had consumed her. She shook her head. "I'm sorry, Ethan, but I can't do this anymore." She closed the door, leaning against it as tears streamed down her face. It wasn't easy, but she knew she had made the right decision. In the weeks that followed, Lauren began to rebuild her life piece by piece. She joined a local yoga class, something she'd always wanted to try but had never made time for. She reconnected with old friends, filling her evenings with laughter and stories instead of loneliness, and slowly she started to feel like herself again. But just as things were beginning to settle, life threw her another curveball. One Friday afternoon, as Lauren was leaving work, she noticed a familiar figure waiting by her car. It was Becca. Lauren's immediate instinct was to turn around and walk the other way, but something in Becca's expression stopped her. She looked nervous, almost apologetic. "Lauren," Becca began, her voice shaky, "I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I need to talk to you." Lauren hesitated, then nodded. "Make it quick. I need to set the record straight," Becca said, her eyes darting nervously. "Ethan didn't just lie to you, he lied to me too. He told me your marriage was over, that you were just roommates at this point. I didn't know the truth until it was too late." Lauren's jaw tightened. "And why are you telling me this now?" "Because you deserve to know," Becca said earnestly. "And because I want you to know that I'm done with him. He tried to reach out to me again, but I blocked him. I want nothing to do with him." Lauren studied Becca for a moment, her emotions a whirlwind of anger, disbelief, and a small, grudging sense of relief. "Thanks for letting me know," she said curtly before walking away. That night, as Lauren sat in her apartment reflecting on Becca's words, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You think you can just walk away? You're going to regret this." Lauren's blood ran cold. She stared at the message, her mind racing. Was it Ethan or someone else? The thought of him lashing out in desperation made her stomach churn. She decided to forward the message to Sarah, who immediately called her. "Lauren, you need to be careful. If Ethan's getting hostile, you might need to take legal action." "I can't believe it's come to this," Lauren said, her voice trembling. "I just want to move on." "And you will," Sarah assured her. "But you need to protect yourself first." Lauren decided to confront Ethan directly. She arranged to meet him at a public cafe where she felt safer. When he arrived, he looked tired and defensive, as if he already knew what was coming. "What the hell is this?" Lauren demanded, showing him the message. Ethan glanced at it, his face hardening. "I didn't send that." "Then who did?" Lauren asked, her voice rising. "Because I'm not going to sit here and let you intimidate me." "I don't know," Ethan snapped. "You think I'm the only one who's angry about how things turned out?" Lauren stared at him, her mind racing. Was he lying? Or was someone else involved in this mess? The encounter left Lauren shaken. She decided to file a report with the police, just to have the incident documented. It felt surreal, like something out of a bad movie, but she was done letting fear control her. That evening, she received another message, this time from a different number. "You're stronger than you think. Don't let him win." The cryptic nature of the message was unsettling, but Lauren chose to interpret it as a sign of encouragement. She blocked the number and resolved to focus on the positive steps she was taking in her life. As the divorce was finalized, Lauren felt a strange mixture of grief and relief. The chapter with Ethan was officially closed, and while it hadn't ended the way she'd hoped, she was ready to move forward. She threw herself into her new routines: yoga, painting classes, and even a book club. Each new activity was a small act of reclaiming her identity, a step toward the future she was building for herself. And if you've ever faced a situation where you had to choose between holding on and letting go, what did you do? Share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more stories like this one. Your support means everything. With the divorce finalized, Lauren thought she was finally free from Ethan and the chaos he'd brought into her life. But the cryptic messages she'd been receiving kept her on edge. Despite blocking the numbers, new ones appeared almost daily, each one filled with veiled threats or ominous encouragement. One night, while Lauren was sitting in her living room with Sarah, another message came through. "You'll never be truly free of me." Sarah, reading over Lauren's shoulder, frowned. "This is getting out of hand. You need to take this to the police again." Lauren nodded, her nerves frayed. She didn't want to admit it, but the messages were starting to wear her down. She didn't know who was behind them: Ethan, someone connected to him, or an entirely different threat. But she knew she couldn't face it alone. The next morning, Lauren went to the police station, this time bringing every message she'd received. The officer she spoke with was sympathetic but cautious. "We'll open a file and investigate," he said, taking her phone to document the texts. "But these kinds of cases can take time. In the meantime, make sure your home is secure, and don't hesitate to call if you feel unsafe." Feeling both relieved and frustrated, Lauren returned home and immediately changed all her locks. She even invested in a home security system, something she'd never thought she'd need in her quiet neighborhood. A week later, Lauren was coming home late from a yoga class when she noticed something unusual. The light in her bedroom window was on. She distinctly remembered turning it off before leaving. Her heart raced as she approached the front door. The new lock clicked open smoothly, but as she stepped inside, a sense of unease washed over her. The air felt different, heavy. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling. There was no answer, but as she walked into the living room, she saw it, a single rose lying on her coffee table, its petals dark red like blood. Next to it was a note that read, "I'm closer than you think." Lauren stumbled back, her breath catching in her throat. She fumbled for her phone and called the police. When they arrived, they swept the house but found no signs of forced entry. "It's possible they had a copy of your old key," one officer suggested, "or they could have picked the lock." Lauren felt sick. The rose and the note weren't just threats. They were proof that someone had been inside her sanctuary. Determined not to let fear control her life, Lauren hired a private investigator. His name was Mike, a gruff but kind man who immediately put her at ease. "We'll figure out who's doing this," Mike assured her, "and we'll make sure they can't hurt you." Over the next few days, Mike dug into Ethan's background, his connections, and anyone who might have a reason to target Lauren. He also installed surveillance cameras around her home, giving her an added sense of security. Meanwhile, Lauren found herself jumping at every sound, every shadow. She hated feeling so vulnerable, so out of control. One afternoon, Mike called with an update. "I've got something," he said, his tone grim. "Ethan's been talking to someone. A mutual friend of yours, someone you probably didn't expect." Lauren's stomach dropped. "Who?" "Sarah," Mike said. The words hit like a thunderclap. "That's impossible," Lauren stammered. "Sarah's been my rock through all of this. She wouldn't—" "I'm just telling you what I've found," Mike said gently. "They've been in contact for months, and the timing lines up with when the messages started." Lauren's mind raced. Could it be true? Could her closest friend be working against her? Lauren didn't want to believe it, but she couldn't ignore the evidence. That evening, she invited Sarah over, determined to get answers. As they sat across from each other, Lauren decided to cut straight to the point. "Have you been talking to Ethan?" Sarah's eyes widened. "What? No, why would you even ask that?" "Because someone's been sending me threats," Lauren said, her voice trembling. "And I've been told you've been in contact with him." Sarah's face turned red, a mix of anger and hurt. "I can't believe you'd accuse me of something like that. I've been here for you through everything, Lauren." "Why would I betray you?" "I don't know," Lauren admitted, tears welling in her eyes. "But I need the truth." Sarah stood, grabbing her bag. "If you don't trust me, maybe we're not as close as I thought." She stormed out, leaving Lauren feeling more alone than ever. Over the next few days, Lauren tried to focus on work, but her mind was a storm of doubt and fear. She reviewed everything she knew about Sarah, every conversation they'd had, every moment of support she'd offered. Could she have been lying all along? Then, late one night, her phone buzzed again. This time, the message was different. "You should have trusted your instincts. Now it's too late." Lauren felt a chill run down her spine. She forwarded the message to Mike, who called her immediately. "Stay inside," he instructed. "Lock your doors and windows. I'm on my way." Mike arrived within 20 minutes, his face grim as he reviewed the latest message. "Whoever this is, they're escalating," he said. "But I've got a plan." The two reviewed the footage from Lauren's surveillance cameras, and sure enough, a figure had been outside her house just hours earlier. The grainy video showed a shadowy silhouette pacing near her front door before disappearing into the night. Mike decided to stake out Lauren's house, determined to catch whoever was behind the threats. Lauren tried to sleep, but every creak and groan of the house kept her awake. She clutched her phone tightly, ready to call for help if needed. In the early hours of the morning, there was movement outside. Mike, watching from his car, saw a figure approaching Lauren's house. He quietly called for backup before stepping out of his car. "Hey!" he called, his voice cutting through the still night. The figure froze, then turned and bolted. Mike gave chase, his footsteps pounding against the pavement as he pursued the intruder. The chase led to a nearby park, where Mike finally tackled the figure to the ground. As he pulled back the hood, his jaw tightened. It wasn't Ethan. It wasn't even Sarah. It was one of Ethan's co-workers, a man Lauren had met briefly at a company party years ago. Under questioning, the man confessed everything. Ethan had convinced him to send the messages and escalate the threats, promising to pay him in exchange for making Lauren's life miserable. It was all part of Ethan's desperate attempt to regain control after the divorce. When the police brought Ethan in for questioning, he initially denied everything, but faced with the evidence, he finally admitted his role in the harassment. It was a sobering moment for Lauren, who realized just how far Ethan was willing to go to manipulate her. With Ethan arrested and the threats finally over, Lauren felt a sense of relief she hadn't experienced in months. She thanked Mike for his help, grateful to have someone in her corner. As she stood on her front porch, watching the sun rise over the neighborhood, she felt a renewed sense of hope. She had faced her fears, confronted the people who had betrayed her, and come out stronger on the other side. And that's where our story takes a turn toward hope and healing. If you've ever dealt with betrayal or had to rebuild your life, what lessons did you learn? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. With Ethan's arrest, Lauren finally felt the suffocating weight of fear lift from her chest. It was over. The man who had betrayed and tormented her was no longer in her life, and the law ensured he wouldn't hurt her again. But the emotional scars ran deep, and the process of healing was just beginning. Lauren spent the following days in quiet reflection. Her once busy home, filled with tension and unanswered questions, was now a haven of stillness. But the silence wasn't peaceful. It was a constant reminder of everything she'd endured. Sarah came by unexpectedly one afternoon, a bottle of wine in one hand and an apologetic expression on her face. "I'm sorry, Lauren," she said, stepping hesitantly into the living room. "I shouldn't have stormed out like that." Lauren regarded her cautiously, still unsure of where they stood. "You hurt me, Sarah. I thought you were someone I could trust." "I know," Sarah admitted, her voice thick with regret. "And I never talked to Ethan. I swear I don't know why that investigator said I did, but I'd never betray you like that." Lauren studied her friend, searching for any sign of dishonesty. Finally, she nodded. "I believe you, but it's going to take time to rebuild what we had." "I understand," Sarah said softly, "and I'll be here however long it takes." The weeks that followed were a blur of self-discovery. Lauren threw herself into activities that brought her joy: long hikes, watercolor painting, and even a dance class she'd always been too scared to try. She wasn't just trying to distract herself, she was reclaiming the pieces of herself that had been lost in the chaos. One morning, as she sipped her coffee on the patio, Mike called. "I thought you'd like to know. Ethan entered a plea deal. He'll be serving time." Lauren felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. She had loved Ethan once, deeply. Knowing he would face the consequences of his actions brought closure, but it also marked the end of a chapter she'd never wanted to write. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, Lauren decided to visit a local farmer's market. The colorful stalls, filled with fresh produce and handmade crafts, were a welcome escape from her recent troubles. As she browsed a table of lavender-scented candles, a man standing beside her struck up a conversation. "These are my favorites," he said, holding up a small jar. "They smell like my grandmother's garden." Lauren smiled, surprised by the warmth in his voice. "They do smell amazing," she agreed. "I'm Daniel," he said, extending a hand. "New to the area. And you?" "Lauren," she replied, shaking his hand. "Not so new, but still figuring things out." Their conversation flowed easily, and before long, they were walking through the market together, sharing stories about their lives. For the first time in months, Lauren felt a spark of connection, not forced, not complicated, just simple and real. Lauren and Daniel's friendship blossomed over the next few weeks. He was kind, patient, and refreshingly honest, a stark contrast to the deception she'd endured with Ethan. They spent time exploring the town, cooking dinners together, and talking late into the night. Lauren felt herself beginning to heal in ways she hadn't expected. But she was careful, too. She wasn't ready to dive headfirst into another relationship, and Daniel respected that. "Take all the time you need," he said one evening as they sat on her patio, watching the stars. "I'm not going anywhere." Just as Lauren was beginning to feel stable, Ethan's shadow loomed over her life once more. One evening, she received a call from his lawyer. "Ms. Jacobs," the lawyer began, his tone curt, "my client wishes to issue a formal apology. He's asked to meet with you in person." Lauren's stomach churned at the thought. She didn't want to see Ethan again, but part of her was curious. Could he really be sorry for everything he'd done? After much deliberation, she agreed to meet him, on the condition that it would take place in a public setting with legal representatives present. The meeting took place in a sterile conference room at the courthouse. Ethan looked different, thinner, with a shadow of his once confident demeanor. He avoided her gaze as he mumbled his apology. "I'm sorry, Lauren," he said, his voice barely audible. "For everything I was selfish and stupid, and I hurt you in ways I can't take back." Lauren listened silently, her emotions a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and pity. When he finished, she took a deep breath. "I accept your apology, Ethan, but forgiveness doesn't mean I'll forget. You need to take responsibility for your actions and let me move on." He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "I will." Leaving the courthouse, Lauren felt a sense of closure she hadn't realized she needed. The chapter with Ethan was finally, truly over. She could move forward without the weight of unresolved anger holding her back. That evening, she called Daniel and told him about the meeting. "It wasn't easy," she admitted, "but I'm glad I did it." "I'm proud of you," Daniel said. "You're stronger than you think." As the seasons changed and summer faded into fall, Lauren found herself embracing the future with open arms. She had rebuilt her life, piece by piece, and rediscovered her sense of self. Her friendship with Daniel deepened, and while she wasn't ready to call it love, she knew it was something special. One crisp autumn morning, as she walked through the park, Lauren paused to take in the vibrant colors of the leaves. The world felt alive, full of possibilities, and for the first time in years, so did she. And there you have it, the journey of rebuilding after betrayal. If you've ever found yourself at rock bottom, how did you find your way back up? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Just as Lauren was beginning to embrace her new life, an unexpected development threw her world back into turmoil. One evening, as she walked home from the yoga studio, she noticed a black SUV parked near her apartment. It wasn't unusual for cars to be in the neighborhood, but this one seemed familiar, eerily so. She'd seen it parked outside the courthouse during her meeting with Ethan. At first, she brushed it off as coincidence, but over the next few days, the SUV appeared again and again, always lingering in the same spots she frequented. Her nerves were on edge. Who was watching her, and why? Lauren reached out to Mike, the private investigator who had helped her before. When she explained the situation, his tone was serious. "We need to take this seriously, Lauren. If someone's following you, it's more than just a coincidence." Mike installed additional cameras around her apartment and offered to run a trace on the license plate. In the meantime, he advised Lauren to stay alert and avoid walking alone at night. It felt like her world was shrinking again, and the fear she thought she'd left behind was creeping back in. A week later, Mike called with an update. "The SUV belongs to a private security firm," he said. "And guess who hired them?" Lauren's stomach churned. "Ethan." "Bingo," Mike replied. "It looks like he's trying to keep tabs on you, even from behind bars." Lauren was furious. After everything she'd been through, Ethan was still trying to control her life. She contacted her lawyer immediately, who filed for a restraining order against Ethan and anyone acting on his behalf. The legal process was slow, but Lauren was determined to protect herself. As the investigation continued, a new piece of information came to light. Mike discovered that one of Ethan's old colleagues, a man named Tom, was behind the surveillance. He had been acting on Ethan's instructions, but he wasn't just watching Lauren. He was digging into her life, her routines, and even her finances. When Mike confronted Tom, the man broke down. "Ethan promised me money," he admitted. "He said it was just to make sure she was okay. I didn't know it would go this far." Lauren was livid. She couldn't believe the lengths Ethan was willing to go to maintain a hold on her life. It wasn't about love, it was about control. Lauren decided she'd had enough. She wasn't going to let Ethan or anyone else dictate her life. With Mike's help, she gathered all the evidence she could, surveillance footage, emails, and Tom's confession, and presented it to the authorities. The case against Ethan was growing stronger, and Lauren finally felt like she had the upper hand. But taking control of her life wasn't just about legal battles. Lauren began focusing on her own strength, both physically and emotionally. She took self-defense classes, not just to protect herself, but to reclaim the sense of power she'd lost. Each class left her feeling stronger, more capable, and less afraid. One evening, as Lauren walked to her car after class, she felt a presence behind her. Her pulse quickened, but instead of freezing, she turned around to face whoever it was. It was Tom. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice steady. Tom held up his hands. "I'm not here to hurt you, I wanted to apologize." Lauren narrowed her eyes. "You think an apology is going to fix this? You helped Ethan stalk me, invade my privacy, and make me feel unsafe in my own home." "I know," Tom said, his voice breaking. "And I'm sorry I've told the police everything. I just wanted you to know that I'm done working for him." Lauren stared at him for a long moment before nodding. "Good. Because if I see you near me again, I won't hesitate to call the police." Tom nodded, backing away. As Lauren got into her car, she felt a rush of adrenaline. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was fighting back. The following week, Lauren stood in court as Ethan faced new charges related to the harassment. She didn't flinch as he looked at her, his once confident demeanor replaced by a hollow shell of the man she'd married. When the judge handed down the sentence, a significant extension to his time in prison, Lauren felt a sense of justice she hadn't thought possible. After the hearing, Daniel met her outside the courthouse. He didn't say anything, just pulled her into a warm hug. For the first time in months, Lauren allowed herself to cry, not out of fear or sadness, but out of relief. With Ethan finally out of her life for good, Lauren felt an overwhelming sense of liberation. She threw a small party with her closest friends, celebrating not just the end of a dark chapter, but the beginning of a new one. As she raised a glass, she looked around the room, at Sarah, who had proven her loyalty, at Daniel, who had been her anchor, and at Mike, whose relentless efforts had brought her peace. For the first time in years, she felt truly surrounded by love and support. "This is just the beginning," Lauren said, smiling. "Here's to new beginnings." And that's the climax of Lauren's journey, a story of strength, resilience, and the courage to take back control. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to fight for yourself, even when it felt impossible? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Lauren's celebration was short-lived. While she had officially closed the chapter on Ethan, a gnawing sense of unease remained. She couldn't help but feel like there was something unresolved, a lingering shadow that refused to dissipate. As much as she tried to convince herself otherwise, the feeling wasn't just paranoia, it was intuition. One evening, as she was heading home from dinner with Daniel, she noticed a car following hers. It wasn't the black SUV from before, but the way it lingered 2 cars behind her at every turn sent chills down her spine. When she finally turned onto her street, the car drove past, but not before the driver, a man in a baseball cap, glanced her way. Lauren immediately called Mike, who assured her he would look into it. "It's probably nothing," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But let's not take any chances." The next day, Mike confirmed her fears. The car was registered to a man named Vincent, a former colleague of Ethan's who had been fired for misconduct years earlier. "This guy has a history," Mike explained, "and it's not pretty." Lauren's heart sank. Why would Vincent be following her? Was Ethan orchestrating this from behind bars? Or was Vincent acting on his own? Determined not to live in fear, Lauren decided to confront Vincent directly. With Mike by her side, she arranged to meet him at a coffee shop under the guise of discussing unfinished business with Ethan. When Vincent arrived, his demeanor was smug, almost taunting. "So, you're the infamous Lauren," he said, sliding into the booth across from her. "Ethan's told me all about you." Lauren kept her composure, her voice steady as she replied, "Why are you following me?" Vincent smirked. "Just doing a favor for an old friend." "A friend who's in prison?" Mike interjected, his tone sharp. "You're harassing a woman who's been through enough? Do you really think that's a good idea?" Vincent's smirk faltered, but he quickly recovered. "I'm just keeping an eye out. Nothing illegal about that." Mike leaned in, his voice low and menacing. "But there is something illegal about stalking, intimidation, and anything else you've been doing. And trust me, I've got enough evidence to make your life very complicated." Vincent's bravado crumbled under the weight of Mike's words. "Fine," he muttered, standing abruptly. "I'm done. Tell Ethan he's on his own." As he walked away, Lauren felt a rush of relief mixed with lingering fear. She couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over yet. That night, as Lauren reviewed everything Mike had uncovered about Vincent, a new piece of information came to light. Mike had discovered a series of encrypted emails sent between Ethan and an unknown account shortly before his arrest. When decrypted, the emails revealed something shocking. Ethan had planned to transfer a significant amount of money to an offshore account. Money Lauren hadn't known existed. "I think this account was meant to fund whatever he was planning," Mike explained, "and Vincent was probably part of it." Lauren was stunned. Not only had Ethan betrayed her emotionally, but he'd also tried to financially manipulate her. The thought of him plotting all of this, even as their marriage fell apart, was almost too much to bear. Lauren knew she couldn't just let this go. With Mike's help, she contacted her lawyer and provided the evidence of Ethan's financial schemes. The lawyer assured her that they could use this information to secure a stronger case against him, potentially freezing his assets and preventing any further manipulation. But Lauren wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She realized she wanted to take a stand, not just against Ethan, but against anyone who thought they could control or intimidate someone into submission. The day of Ethan's hearing for the new charges was tense. Lauren sat in the courtroom, her heart pounding as the prosecution presented the evidence of his financial schemes. Ethan sat at the defense table, looking more disheveled and defeated than ever. When the judge handed down the verdict, an additional sentence and the freezing of his assets, Lauren felt a wave of relief wash over her. For the first time, she truly believed that Ethan could no longer touch her life. Outside the courthouse, Daniel was waiting with open arms. "It's over," he said softly, holding her close. "You're free." Lauren nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I finally am." With the legal battles behind her, Lauren focused on rebuilding her life with newfound strength and clarity. She continued her self-defense classes, not just as a precaution, but as a way to empower herself. She also started volunteering at a local women's shelter, sharing her story with others who had faced similar challenges. Her relationship with Daniel blossomed into something beautiful and supportive. He encouraged her independence, celebrated her victories, and stood by her side without trying to overshadow her journey. One evening, Lauren sat down to write an article about her experiences, titled "Breaking Free: My Journey to Reclaiming Myself." The piece was raw and honest, detailing the struggles she'd faced and the lessons she'd learned. She submitted it to a popular online magazine, and within days, it went viral. Messages poured in from people all over the world, thanking her for her courage and sharing their own stories of survival and strength. Lauren realized that by sharing her pain, she had given others hope, a gift that made her journey feel worthwhile. As the sun set on a crisp spring evening, Lauren stood on her balcony, looking out at the city she now called home. The skyline was a mix of soft pastels and glowing lights, a reminder of how far she'd come. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a fighter, a creator, and a woman who had reclaimed her life. And as she stood there, the cool breeze brushing against her skin, she knew this was only the beginning of the life she was meant to live. And that's the conclusion of Lauren's journey, a story of resilience, justice, and the power of reclaiming your life. Have you ever faced a situation that forced you to find strength you didn't know you had? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Lauren stood at the edge of her balcony, the soft hum of city life below reminding her of how far she'd come. The days of fear, manipulation, and betrayal felt like a distant memory, though the scars they left would remain a part of her story forever. For the first time in years, she felt free, truly free. Ethan's sentencing had brought closure, but it was more than just legal vindication. It was the end of a chapter that had tested her resilience, pushed her to her limits, and forced her to grow in ways she never imagined. Now, she was ready to turn the page and start a new chapter, one she would write entirely on her own terms. Lauren spent the following weeks reflecting on everything she had learned. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been a catalyst for profound change. She had learned to trust her instincts, set boundaries, and value herself in ways she never had before. Her relationship with Daniel was a testament to her growth. It wasn't about filling a void or rushing into something new. It was about mutual respect and building something healthy from the ground up. Daniel encouraged her to embrace her independence, reminding her that she didn't need anyone to complete her. One afternoon, Lauren received a letter from Ethan. She hesitated to open it, but ultimately decided it was better to face whatever it contained. The letter was filled with apologies, some genuine, others still tinged with his old manipulative tendencies. He admitted to his faults, acknowledged the pain he'd caused, and wished her well. Lauren set the letter aside, feeling surprisingly indifferent. She realized that she didn't need his apology to heal. She had already found closure on her own, and Ethan's words, while meaningful, were just a footnote in her story. Inspired by the messages she received after her article went viral, Lauren decided to channel her experiences into advocacy. She partnered with local organizations to speak at events, sharing her story with women who were navigating their own journeys of survival and self-discovery. Each time she spoke, she felt a little stronger, a little more whole. One evening, after a particularly moving event, a young woman approached her. "Your story gave me the courage to leave a toxic relationship," she said, tears in her eyes. "I don't know where I'd be without it." Lauren hugged her, her heart swelling with gratitude. She had turned her pain into a purpose, and that purpose was making a difference. Lauren's days became filled with new routines, new hobbies, and new dreams. She traveled to places she'd always wanted to visit, explored photography, and even adopted a rescue dog named Luna, whose playful energy brought endless joy to her life. Her relationship with Daniel continued to grow, but they kept things simple and easy, savoring the present without rushing into the future. "We've got time," Daniel would say, his warm smile reassuring her that they were exactly where they needed to be. One day, while packing up some old boxes, Lauren stumbled upon a photo album from her life with Ethan. She flipped through the pages, smiling at some memories and wincing at others. The photos were a reminder of a life that once was, a life that had shaped her but no longer defined her. She decided to keep the album, not as a relic of pain, but as a symbol of resilience. It was a chapter of her story. And while it was over, it was also a part of what had brought her to where she was today. As Lauren sat on her balcony that evening, watching the city lights twinkle against the darkening sky, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She realized that the most important lesson she had learned was this: her worth wasn't defined by someone else's actions. She had found strength in herself, and that strength had carried her through the darkest of times. Life doesn't always go as planned, she thought, but sometimes the detours lead you exactly where you're meant to be. And that's the end of Lauren's story, a journey of betrayal, resilience, and rediscovery. It's a reminder that even in the face of pain and loss, there's always a chance to rebuild and find joy again. What about you? Have you ever faced a moment that tested your strength and forced you to grow? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. And if you've found inspiration in Lauren's journey, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next story. The next morning, Lauren woke up early and headed to the park with Luna. As the sun rose, casting golden light over the trees, she felt a profound sense of peace. Her life wasn't perfect, but it was hers, filled with possibility, love, and the kind of strength she never thought she'd have. Lauren smiled as Luna bounded ahead, chasing after a butterfly. The future was wide open, and she was ready to embrace it. Thank you for watching this story and joining me on Lauren's journey. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe to my channel for more stories of resilience, hope, and growth. Until next time, remember, you are stronger than you think.